Thanks, Bill, for coming out.
Thank you. Are we broadcasting this?
We're recording it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we can.
I didn't know what I could and couldn't.
You can speak freely, is what I'm trying to get at. You can. You don't need to censor yourself.
I can curse?
You can curse. Yeah.
All right.
And just a quick, no rules around here. We're all family, but silence your cell phones and your voices. If you have to chat away, maybe step outside so that everybody can kind of find out what we're talking about here. I want to start really with a quick story, and it will lead to a question, I promise. But when I was born, my uncle, he printed out the words to Bob Dylan's Forever Young. And it hangs on my wall to this day. I've had it for 36 years now. And when my niece was born, I wrote out the words to Tonight, Tonight, because I felt like it had kind of a similar tone of, be yourself, go for what you need to do your thing. And the question is, where, and I'm just going to jump right into the creative process here, where do you find your muse, your creative space to write some of the songs that you wrote and the genius lyrics that you've come up with?
That's very kind of you. Honestly, I don't really know. I mean, I think I'm kind of a smart guy, and I can BS like the rest of them. But when I'm in that space, it's whatever comes through. And that's what's sometimes hard, is because, I always write songs from my heart. And, I've written songs that people get married to, and, and then I've written these other songs, and everyone says, oh, this is a dumb song. It all comes from the same place. And it comes from the same place, but then sometimes my mind will think, that's not good enough, or it's my mind that will alter the perception, and even my perception, just like a fan would look at a song.
Right.
And I can't tell how many times I've thought a song was great, and later on I think, oh, it's pretty bad. And then songs I didn't think much of 20 years later, I listen to and go, wow, that actually touches me, because I'm talking about some part of myself that I forgot about.
Right, right.
It's all glory to God on that. I mean, it's just the voice comes through, and it speaks, and I just try to listen.
And there's no real rhyme or reason to when it's gonna. You could wake up in the middle of the night, or you could just jump away from dinner and start scribbling.
I saw this therapist once. He was kind of an unusual. He wasn't like your normal therapist, and he said it's not uncommon that artists don't get a lot of sleep or do drugs because they want to be in that kind of that alpha connected space, and when I was younger, I used to push myself to get into that space, because when you're in that space, it's such an incredible feeling. You kind of, stuff makes sense. Like the larger picture of life makes sense. And that's where the communication comes from. I'm at a point now where I don't need to do any of that. I can go into that space anytime, because it's always there. And I think that's the message of love in life, is love's always there. It's our own brain that gets in the way.
We got a bunch of questions from the group here, and one of them is a little bit like what you're talking about. Have you ever, seen someone or an event or met somebody that might have inspired a particular song? Do you have an example of that? An event that sprang out a single or a song?
Well, there's things like one time I met a girl whose name, at least I remembered her name being Starla, and I wrote this song called Starla. It had nothing to do with the girl. But then there's other times where I've met somebody, and when I'm in that space, their energy or something will come to me. It's not always necessarily a direct thing. Sometimes songs are composites of two women that I've known, but maybe they can kind of remind me of a certain feeling, and so I write from the feeling. I'm not necessarily a person that takes real life and turns it. I'm more of a dream person, and then I kind of mix and match reality in the middle of that.
Jumping into the studio for the most recent album, Oceania, how has the more experienced and veteran Billy Corgan changed?
You mean the old? That's code word for old.
In the studio versus the early albums, Gish and Siamese Dream, and.
I think I've learned to trust myself, be patient, and also really trust my bandmates and put them in positions of success. I think maybe when I was younger I wasn't patient enough, and I can do stuff really fast, and sometimes it takes time to get to the message of something. So I think I'm just more patient with the process. But it's hard. I mean, Oceania was recorded April to October of last year, and so I basically gave up my whole spring and summer in a room with no windows, 10, 12 hours a day. So I have to give up one thing to get the other, and to sit in there and futz around with a keyboard line for 4 hours, that most people probably wouldn't even hear if it flies by. That's the weird part of my life.
Well, so what is the Billy Corgan like in the studio? How does he differ from the Billy Corgan that's hanging out with us now?
I'm pretty much the same. I mean, when you watch like the TV movie and they're in the studio, like take one, and then the guy's like all super intense. It's almost never like that.
Yeah.
It's really everyone's sitting around drinking their Starbucks, kind of going, "Oh, what are we going to do now?" It's very slow. It takes forever. You spend 6 hours on the snare drum sound, and you want to shoot yourself. It's just the way it goes. I mean, it's small moments of inspiration and a lot of waiting.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. I mean, getting all hyped up doesn't really work on a 10-hour day. You can't get. It's not a place for arguing. It's a place for sort of just thoughtful work.
Yeah, and by the way, congratulations. I mean, it's only been out for a few days, but Oceania is getting great reviews, and I think some of the best work you've probably done. Would you agree?
I think it's up there, but it takes a while to really understand the depth of a work. Like I often think of the film "It's a Wonderful Life," which is a total classic. I watch it at every Christmas, and yet when it came out, it didn't get great reviews. They said it was too overly sentimental. It didn't do very well at the box office. This is Hollywood. You know where that goes. And yet now it's a movie that we all have. I mean, is there anybody here that hasn't seen "It's a Wonderful Life"? Not a single person raising their hand.
It's on repeat during the holidays. Everybody's
it's like, and I like to say, like when we put out Siamese Dream, it wasn't considered an instant classic. It didn't blow up like Nevermind did. It sold and it was successful and it made us a big band, but it wasn't like this kablooey thing like happened with some of the other bands. So I guess maybe more than most people, I'm a little bit suspicious of the condemnation and the praise. To me, they kind of come from the same place. It's when you put out a work of art, everybody wants to make it their own, and that's the great part of it. But in a way, it gets taken away from me. If I told you my real opinions of every album, you'd probably laugh. You know what I mean?
Do you have a favorite?
Not really. No. I honestly, and I think the best album I've ever made, I haven't released. It's sitting in a can at home. I did a solo acoustic record about my hometown of Chicago, and I did one show, and I thought the show was amazing, and then I went on like an idiot the next day and read what fans were writing, and they said, "Can you just please pick up an electric guitar again? Screw this acoustic music. We don't want to hear this shit." Da 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 da.
Really?
And I said, "Okay," and I put the album back in the can, and it's sitting there to this day. And the people who've heard it's like, they said it's some of the most beautiful work I've ever done. It's just sitting there.
You don't seem like a guy that listens to critics, though.
It's hard to explain. I don't listen to what critics have to say about me. Doesn't change me, but it does change the sort of my relationship to the work in terms of what I want to do with the work, if that makes any sense. Because at some point, I mean, look, this is the best received work I've done, doesn't matter Pumpkins or not, in 17 years. Think about it, 17 years I've been here and I'm an idiot, right? And every day I hear my songs on the radio, so I'm not a total idiot, right? So somewhere between idiot and total idiot, that's where I've lived for a long time. So I've had to learn how to not sort of factor that stuff in to the point where it affects me as an artist, but it's affected me as a businessman. And I don't think that's a bad thing to talk about anymore, because I think what we're seeing now is the rise of the artist as entrepreneur. For example, Amanda Palmer of the Dresden Dolls raised $1 million in her own Kickstarter campaign. That's going to be the new way, where the radio station is going to play what they believe and the artist is going to play what they believe, and no one's going to be able to get in the middle of that process anymore. And ultimately, fans are going to get better music. The artists are going to stop being babies because they're going to stop getting kicked around by somebody in an office. And this whole world's going to grow up together.
It's like band is a small business. You kind of have to do every element of it.
But in the old days, it was like that was something you weren't supposed to talk about.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we don't care what we sell. It doesn't mean anything. Well, it does mean something, because if you don't sell, you're not going to make another one. I mean, you have to at some point do the business. I don't care if you sell hot dogs. You got to move this stuff. And music is so dynamic. What's so incredible at rock and roll is when the fans are in and the band's in it. It's like, wow, what incredible energy that's unleashed. And when you make music that people don't react to, it's not always as simple as, well, it's not good, because we've all got those albums that didn't sell that we love. And, no better version than the Velvet Underground, who never sold records, and they're one of the most important and influential bands ever. It's not always about that. Sometimes it's just about timing. Sometimes it's about politics. Sometimes it's about the damn haircut, which I only have one.
Yeah. How did you mentioned Nevermind a little bit ago. How did you feel early to mid '90s as Smashing Pumpkins were coming up in popularity, alongside the Pearl Jams, the Nirvanas, the Alice in Chains, the Soundgarden of Seattle, and you were grouped in with that grunge movement. How did you feel about that?
Well, we were fans of everybody, so it wasn't like being compared to something you didn't like. But at the same time, we felt we were so much more sophisticated. We were coming more from like the Beatles and that kind of thing, you know, of more of a varied background. And so when you would be compared to a band that's basically got one gimmick, to use a wrestling term, one-trick pony kind of stuff,
right,
you think like, okay, but that attitude and my reaction to it led a lot to us doing stuff like Tonight Tonight, because I knew that nobody in our generation could do Tonight Tonight, right? So that was my you-know-what to everybody, you know.
Did you have a favorite album or band of that kind of quote-unquote grunge era?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, beyond the obvious albums, like the ones that sort of everybody would know, unfortunately, I think one sad part of the grunge generation is they never got around to making, you know, those great albums. You know, beyond the obvious, beyond, let's say, the top five, like Pearl Jam's First and Nevermind. There's not that substantive album like when the Beatles made Revolver. The grunge generation doesn't have the Beatles' Revolver in our catalog. Kurt Cobain never got around to making his White Album, you know, and I think that's a real tragedy because we'd be leaning on that work now, all of us.
I want to stay on the topic of music. I mean, you grew up with a music family. Your father plays. What was on in the house when you were early? What were some of the first things you heard out of the family stereo?
Well, my dad used to like to sit at the kitchen table and smoke joints while we ate. Yeah. And so, literally, just one after the other. So I was probably baked my whole childhood. That might explain a lot. But I remember he had a turntable right next to the kitchen table. Oh, and so he put on Stevie Wonder, Al Green, Stylistics. He loved soul. But when I'd rummage around his record collection, I'd find, the Yardbirds or Led Zeppelin, stuff he didn't really like. He didn't love those bands, but he kind of had them around because he played in cover bands, so he'd learn a song or two. The Jimi Hendrix he loved would be laying around, so it was a bit of that. And then, of course, what was playing on Chicago radio.
Did he teach you guitar?
No. I got him. I got all this birthday money. I got a guitar. He brought me the guitar. He kind of sat there for 1 hour, told me how to hold the pick, hold my hands, taught me House of the Rising Sun by the Animals, and that was my one lesson from my dad.
And then it was just trial and error.
You're on your own, buddy.
Did it come pretty easy for you?
Looking back, yeah, because I was around a lot of kids who played guitar. As heavy metal was really popular where I grew up, so everybody's playing Led Zeppelin and all that stuff. And I remember when I first started, I kind of asked some of the guys around to show me a few things, and they're like, "Oh yeah, whatever." And 6 months later, I was blowing everybody out of the water in school, and they were like, they couldn't understand because I just started. Yeah. It just came so naturally to me. But of course, I didn't have any perspective. It just, it's like
in your genes a little bit.
But I can't speak any other language, and if you've ever known anyone who can speak like 5 languages, they're just, for some reason, they're just really good at it. I was just really good at the guitar, and I didn't have to think about it; it just kind of came to me.
Yeah. And one of the fans' questions out there was asking about your dad. What they want to know how he is, and if you ever plan to work and make music with him again.
My dad's great. I talk to him almost every day. He lives in Florida. Really happy grandparent. He keeps harassing me to make some grandbabies. And, he's good. As far as music, he's kind of pretty much retired from music. He had a lot of bad experiences in music, which had something to do with why he didn't want me to go in music, because he got ripped off and like everybody else. And he ended up playing the Holideens of the world and stuff. So music became something that he hated because he associated it with having to work, and which, of course, that's not where he started. So he's kind of more living vicariously now through what I do and more supportive in that way.
Billy Corgan, is there a song that you wish you had wrote?
Tons, yeah. Tons, yeah. That's always like, that's the jealous. When I'm jealous of a song, that's when I think I wish I'd written that one.
Let's hear a few.
Oh, geez, I don't know. Down in a Hole by Alice in Chains. I always thought was such a great song. Nice. What's that song by Nirvana? Is it Polly or
Polly? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what an incredible song. Yeah, there's tons. I mean, Strawberry Fields Forever by the Beatles. I mean, if I'd written one of those, where would we be? We wouldn't be at this rooftop. We'd be in a higher building, right?
We'd be at the Capitol Records somewhere, right on the top of there. I lost my train of thought here. Do you Shoot, I'll just go to another question. I'll come back because I was going to ask. I was going to follow that.
There's only so many topics: drugs, women, rock and roll.
Okay, the one thing I do want to talk about is you've always been open about your struggles with depression, anxiety. How have you learned to cope over the years?
God. This is that simple. Because God's the only thing, and even for people who don't believe in God, I replace the word with love. Right? It's the one thing where you can think about that somewhere out there, there's something that loves you no matter what you do. Because if you look around in life for that, you're never going to get it. It's not going to come from fans. It's not going to come from record sales. It's not going to come from your band, your family. That constant. Because everybody's human and they're going to stumble, including me. And God or love or the mountain or the tree or my doggy is the only thing that I think, okay, that's what love is, right? In the constant. And so once I associate myself with that, then I want to live up to that and not live down to our stupid culture, which celebrates things that don't have anything to do with love. And as particularly, I see so many beautiful young women here, and the way women are degraded in our culture bothers the shit out of me. Just bothers the shit out of me. I'm so tired of women in this culture being degraded. And then consequently, then men being put down in every sitcom for being idiots. Just
stereotypical stuff, yeah.
I think it's time to grow up from all that. We have a lot of incredible people in this country with a lot of diverse opinions, and we need them.
So you've obviously created this philosophy through maturity and
trial and error.
Yeah, I mean through experience and
brick walls,
older wisdom. How has it changed you as a musician, as a songwriter, as a producer over the years?
Well, that's a really good question. I'm not sure, other than I've just learned to trust myself. I mean, I made an album called The Door after my mother died. And, got really bad reviews. It didn't sell. The record company started treating me, once again, like an idiot, where only a year before they couldn't fumble all over themselves to give me whatever I wanted. When you go through those types of things in life, really hard times, and you see people turn away from you and realize that it's really not love that they're interested in, it's fame or power or who's got the golden glow around them. I don't know, you just learn to just find something deeper. So at this point in my life, my relationship with music is one of joy and appreciation, and then consequently really appreciating the fans that have stuck by me. I mean, I'm really humbled by that, because we're going to see a lot of fans come back around on this album. We welcome them back. We love it, and we especially want young kids and new fans. We want that new blood around us. But the fans that have been there the whole time, I'm really humbled, because they're the ones that have kept me going at times when it's been really rough.
Do you buy into the notion that, a lot of some of the greatest albums, greatest musicians have written some of their best stuff during their darkest times?
I think that's, in a way it's easier to communicate when you're really in pain, because you almost kind of have to. But ultimately it's the less sophisticated form of communication. One of the greatest songs ever written, Imagine. That's not from a place of pain. That's from a place of hope and love. And we need more of those songs. I think we've pretty much covered all the other stuff. That doesn't mean I still don't go there, but I think typical, right? Rolling Stone does this issue called The Future of Rock. So they asked me to be in it. Of course, I got like one paragraph. But the guy asked me a question, said, okay, what's the future of rock? And I said, God. And he said, I don't understand. I said, well, God's the third rail of politics and rock and roll. You're not supposed to talk about God, right? But going on to explain it, I said, talking about love, talking about things that really, really, really matter is sort of what rock and roll sort of ignored all these years. It's actually the uncharted territory for people to actually be out there and say, I want to be about love, I'm going to express love in these ways, and all these other things too. That's actually the part of rock and roll that's really left untapped. Of course, they didn't put that in the article. Yeah. because that doesn't fit their version of the future of rock. But that's my future of rock.
And I think you would probably agree that the future of rock is more DIY artists, independent artists. I know you've had challenges with the major labels over the years. Just kind of your general, just the music business right now. Do you think things are moving towards a more positive outcome over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yes. But I think part of that is the fans have to enter into a different relationship with the artist. They can't punish the artist for being a business person.
That's a good way to put it.
And that's why I use somebody like Amanda Palmer or Fiona Apple or something. Like, don't punish the artist for wanting to be a business person, because when you don't support the people you love, you basically are voting for the other team. And we know what the other team sounds like. They're Robot 1, Robot 2, Robot 3. Okay? Or as I would say, strippers with guitars. You know what I mean? So you got to understand, you got to vote for your people. You don't have to vote for me, but vote for your people. Support your people. It's like, you know, when you drive around your neighborhood and you think, you know, we got to clean this place up. Well, it's the same thing in music. You got to let's clean this place up. Let's get behind the people we really love. You know, I'm okay. I mean, I've done all right. I wrote a lot of big songs, and I live in a nice house. I mean, I can do without. There's a lot of artists out there. The difference between your vote, your retweet, your support of them is the difference between them eating or having to go work at a coffee house and then having to compromise themselves in a record system which is built to exploit them. Okay? Because that record system still is built to exploit them. So you got to help these artists build a new system, and ultimately what will happen is the record business will have to come around to our way of thinking because they won't be able to compete. Because once you get behind the people you love, that's an unstoppable force. Think about it. If an artist has 50,000 fans, just 50,000 fans around the world, 7 billion people, they can do exactly what they want, they can write what they want, they can say what they want, and they can say it directly to you. But they need you to help them. And you can't punish them for saying, well, I got to get this done, I got to do this Kickstarter thing, I got to... You can't, if you punish them and get back to the old mentality like, oh, artists, they just roll out of bed and the song comes to them and they don't care about anything else but just love and music and rock and roll. That's BS. It's always been BS, and everybody knows it. But it's like that game. It's like the political game, like wink, wink. Get out of the wink, wink game. Get down to the ground level of supporting artists you love. Call the radio station. Say, play that song again. I love when you play that. I mean, you know it. You work inside. What people call in matters.
Yeah. Billy for president, I say.
President of pain.
You're a smart guy. I mean, have you ever thought about getting, you know, I know you would never want to do anything on the corporate mass level, but, you know, being a spokesperson for what's going on in the industry right now, because you have, I think, the attitude and philosophy of where things should be heading.
I don't know. I mean, every time I open my mouth about this stuff, like I talked at South by Southwest, and I read some of the comments on some of the websites just to see what the general, not to see what people were saying to approve, but whether or not what I was saying message-wise was getting through, right? There was one, it was like a website where there's a lot of people from the music business, not fans, but like music business people. His music sucks. His music hasn't been good for 20, like in essence, because his music sucks, because I'm not a fan, his message sucks.
Right.
And that's just idiocy. I've been in this